Few institutions guard bloodlines as fiercely as the British monarchy. For centuries, the crown has rested not simply on who was born royal, but on who was born the right way, in wedlock, legitimate, beyond dispute. Step outside that line and your claim is dust. But there was one moment, one extraordinary moment in history, when an illegitimate child came close than anyone else to seizing the crown of England. This is the story of James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, the beloved bastard of King Charles II, who almost became king. In the British monarchy, the law of succession is rigid. Only legitimate heirs, children born of a lawful marriage, can inherit the throne. Bastards, no matter how adored, no matter how capable, are automatically excluded. Yet kings, from Henry I to Charles II, had mistresses aplenty and acknowledged dozens of illegitimate offspring. These children might rise to prominence at court, be given titles, lands, or military commands, but they could never, under law, inherit the crown. And yet, in the volatile 17th century, this unshakable rule was tested like never before. But before we meet the Duke of Monmouth, we must return to the turbulence that shaped his father. The British monarchy was not always secure. In fact, just a generation earlier, it had been torn down completely. King Charles I, Monmouth's grandfather, believed in the divine right of kings. He ruled as though his crown answered to no parliament, no people. But England was changing. Parliament demanded a greater say in government, while religious tensions pitted Protestants against Catholics, Anglicans against Puritans. Charles I's stubbornness lit the spark of the English Civil War. Royalists against parliamentarians, Crown against Commons, Father against nation. After years of brutal conflict, Parliament won. In 1649, the unthinkable happened. King Charles I was tried and executed for treason against his own people. England was declared a republic, the monarchy abolished, its crown cast aside. Into this storm stepped Oliver Cromwell, the Puritan general whose rule became the new order. He established the Commonwealth, a strict regime of godliness and discipline. For many, it was freedom from monarchy. For others, it was a joyless oppression. And what of the royal heir? Charles I's son, the young Charles, fled into exile. Homeless, drifting through the courts of Europe, he carried a title, but no throne. For over a decade, he lived as a king without a kingdom, never knowing if the monarchy would return. But when Cromwell died and the Republic faltered, the people longed for stability, for laughter, for something beyond sermons and sackcloth. And so, in 1660, Parliament called the exiled prince home. London erupted in celebration. At 30 years old, Charles II rode through cheering crowds to reclaim the throne his father had lost. The monarchy was restored, and with it, a very different kind of king. Charles was witty, magnetic and indulgent. He would be known as the Merry Monarch. His court was infamous for its excess and debauchery. He kept multiple mistresses: Barbara Villiers, Nell Gwynn, Louise de Kerouaille, and fathered at least 14 illegitimate children, whom he openly acknowledged. But with his queen, Catherine of Braganza, he had no legitimate heirs. This left the kingdom vulnerable to succession crisis. Without a legitimate heir, the throne would pass to his Catholic brother, James II, a future many Protestants dreaded. Among all of Charles's bastards, none captured his heart like James Scott, Duke of Monmouth. Born in 1649 to Lucy Walter, his father's Welsh mistress, Monmouth was handsome, charming, and Protestant, beloved by the people and by his father. Charles showered his son with affection and honours, but crucially, he never legitimised him. Without an Act of Parliament or a royal decree, Monmouth remained barred from succession. When King Charles II died suddenly in February 1685, the throne passed to his brother James, Duke of York, now James II. But James was Catholic, and this was a problem in Protestant England. Many feared that a Catholic monarch would drag them back into Rome's orbit. In this climate of tension, Monmouth saw his chance. He landed in the West Country with a small force in June 1685, proclaiming himself the rightful Protestant king. He claimed that his parents, Charles and Lucy Walter, had secretly married, making him legitimate. Monmouth's course attracted thousands of poor farmers and craftsmen desperate for a Protestant alternative to James II. But the rebellion was ill-prepared, poorly armed, and hopelessly outnumbered. On the night of July 6, 1685, Monmouth's army clashed with royal troops at Sedgemoor. It was the last pitched battle on English soil. Monmouth's men fought bravely, but were crushed. Hundreds were killed, thousands captured. Monmouth fled, but was soon captured. Dirty and exhausted, in a ditch, he begged his uncle, King James II, for mercy, even breaking down in tears. But there was no mercy. On July 15, 1685, James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, was executed on Tower Hill. The executioner botched the job, hacking several times before severing his head. Monmouth's death ended the dream of an illegitimate king. James II reigned, but his Catholicism proved deeply unpopular. Just 3 years later, in 1688, he was overthrown in the Glorious Revolution, replaced by his Protestant daughter Mary and her husband, William of Orange. In hindsight, Monmouth's rebellion foreshadowed this revolution, a warning that England would not tolerate a Catholic king. His story also cemented the absolute rule of legitimacy. Never again would a royal bastard seriously challenge for the throne. James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, was the closest Britain ever came to crowning a king born illegitimate. His rebellion failed, but it revealed the deep anxieties of succession and faith that haunted the Stuart dynasty. In the monarchy, blood was not enough. Legitimacy was law, and without it, even the most beloved son of a king could lose everything. The British Crown has always rested on fragile foundations. Not just power, not just birth, but the unbroken line of lawful inheritance. And Monmouth's tragic gamble remains the greatest reminder of how dangerous it was to challenge that line.